Good morning. What a great crowd. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk to you today. Many asked me to talk to you about law enforcement and community relations. And I can't imagine a more important topic right now in our nation than relationships between law enforcement and the community. We're all aware of some of the tragedies that have occurred over the past few years, the George Floyd incident, the incident in Memphis, Tennessee, Uvalde, Texas, the failures that law enforcement suffered there. All of those things go towards eroding police trust. I believe, though, firmly that those things, although they've occurred all over the country, are not really situations that we deal with here on the peninsula, at least not in my career. I know that the relationship that I'm aware of and that I've always had with the local surrounding law enforcement agencies around York County, Newport News, Hampton, Poquoson, Williamsburg, James City, we've always worked together and we've worked with our communities, and we believe that relationships with our communities are a fundamental reason why we don't have some of the problems that some of the other agencies had. So I'm going to talk to you briefly today about three things that I believe are really important to establishing and maintaining relationships with the community between law enforcement, and give you some examples of how in York County we've been doing that for a long time. I'm going to start off with a quote. It says, "The police earn public respect and support by respecting community principles. Winning public approval requires hard work to build a reputation, enforcing the laws impartially, hiring officers who represent and understand the community, and using force only as a last resort." That's a very powerful quote. The interesting thing about it is it was written by an individual named Sir Robert Peel in 1829. Sir Robert Peel established the Metropolitan Police Department of London back in that time, and he's known to be the father of community policing. But based on what I just read there, he was very wise even then, and I believe that those words ring true even today, and probably even more so with some of the things that are going on. So let's talk about what I believe, or what my experience has shown to create positive relationships with communities. One, acknowledge and discuss with the communities that you serve the concerns they have. How do we do that in law enforcement? We talked a moment ago, or Kevin did when he introduced me, that in 2020, I initiated the Sheriff's Office Advisory Committee in York County. It wasn't required, but I had been going and attending some of the local talks. There was two various groups, one in the northern part of the county and one in the lower part of the county, that were discussing the issues surrounding the George Floyd incident and the causes and concerns that the community had about how would we respond to that in this area. And it became obvious that this was a hot topic, and I enjoyed going to these talks. But it occurred to me that since they were happening on both ends of the county, that it would probably make better sense to work together. So I approached the two leaders that were doing these talks and asked them if they would join with me in creating the first Sheriff's Office Advisory Committee, and they agreed to do that. So we now have a 17-person advisory committee. We meet once a month. And the real value of this is it gives me an opportunity to hear about concerns in the community that I may not always be aware of. And one of the things that I really emphasize, and even when I go out in community talks today, is it's nice to go to places where people support law enforcement. And by and large, as I said earlier, on the peninsula, I think most of the chiefs and the executives in the law enforcement field around here would tell you that that's the way it is, that people here on the peninsula respect law enforcement and we have a great relationship. But I emphasized to this group that I wanted to reach out to people and meet people who maybe didn't have such a positive light or have a positive experience with law enforcement, because you learn in those types of scenarios when you hear from people who may have had a negative experience with law enforcement and we get to talk about why that occurred, it helps you grow. And I think that I have learned as much from this group as they've learned from me about the various aspects of law enforcement over the years that we've had this. So I see this as a success. I think one of the other things that we do really well in York County is we have a very robust social media page. And we not only discuss various topics in the community or crimes that have occurred, but if you follow our page, you'll see that we put things in there like deputies getting out of the cars to shoot basketball with kids, or throwing a baseball, or rescuing turtles out of the middle of the street. I mean, we have one deputy that has a particular knack for that. And I think that that's important for the community to realize that not only are we out here writing tickets and arresting people, but we're interacting with the community as well. And that gives us a more human side, and it lets the community know that we're not just concerned about the criminal aspect of it, but actually getting out in the community and making a positive statement. And finally, we have what's called the Sheriff's Citizens Academy, which is a 10-week course. We do it twice a year. And if you sign up for this and come and attend this, you get a very in-depth look at the York-Poquoson Sheriff's Office. You meet all the people that work in the 5 different divisions that we have. You have an opportunity to interact with the canines, which is probably the most popular program that we have right now. But you get to ask questions and get a really good behind-the-curtains look at what goes on. And I found that over the years, we've been doing this for 25 plus years, that those people that graduate from the Sheriff's Academy go out and they're very, very much advocates for the Sheriff's Office, and they're able to dispel a lot of the rumors that occur when you start to hear negativity in the community. Second, understand the needs and concerns of your community. When I became the sheriff on January the 1st of this year, within a couple of days after that, we had a tragedy in our neighboring city of Newport News where we had the shooting at the Rich Neck Elementary School. And I had lots of citizens calling me at that point saying, what are we doing to make our schools safer, particularly our elementary schools? Because in York County, we have school resource officers at the high school, we have school resource officers in the middle schools, but right now, we don't have school resource officers in the elementary school. So that was where the concern was. So I partnered with the school division. The superintendent and I decided we were going to go to all the elementary schools, and we read to the kindergarten and the first grade classes. And I absolutely enjoyed it. And I tell people all the time, I enjoy interacting with them more than I do most adults that I'm around on a fairly regular basis. Now, the initial reason that I wanted to start this program was to provide a sense of security in the schools. Because after I did this, I went back to the deputies that worked those areas and say, now I want you to get out of the car, and I want you to go in and introduce yourself to the school officials there, and I want you to continue to do the things that I did, read to the kids. We developed a program where they could eat lunch with them, or they could eat breakfast with them. But what I soon realized was not only were we providing a sense of security for the people that worked there, but the relationship that we were building with these kids at a young age is going to pay dividends down the road. Because as the kids got more used to the deputies being in there and the deputies were adopting these principles, they were like rock stars to these kids. I mean, when the deputies walked in, I mean, they just go nuts. And even when I go back now, it's amazing the reactions I get. So that, to me, is going to pay big dividends down the road, and we're going to continue to do that on a regular basis. Secondly, what I've understood and come to learn, even after all these years in York County, is we have a very large special needs community in this area, not just York County, but on the peninsula. And I became involved with autism and its effects on people because of something that we call the overnight pass-along. Any of the law enforcement officials that are here probably have something that's similar, but I get a notification every morning of some of the things that occurred overnight. Well, I read this particular pass-along that talked about an individual being arrested for driving under the influence, but it was odd to me that when I read it, he was arrested for driving under the influence but blew 000. What it essentially said, he had no alcohol in his system whatsoever. And I didn't read in the report where there was a blood draw, so they weren't suspecting him of driving under the influence of drugs. But unfortunately, this individual was now in the Virginia Peninsula Regional Jail, and it was going to be a holiday weekend, unfortunately, and was going to be there for about 4 days before they would go to court. So I watched the body camera video, and it became apparent to me that this person was not under the influence of any alcohol or drugs. This person was having some type of a mental health issue. So I reached out to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and we have an outstanding relationship with them, and I convinced them this person needed to come out of jail. So we got a court order, and all this person had to do was sign the paperwork and be able to, then they would be allowed to get out of jail. Well, this person was now in a full meltdown at the jail, was not going to sign anything, and was stuck there because they wouldn't sign the paperwork. So I had to go back to the court, and essentially I was asking the court to give me an order to evict this person from the Virginia Peninsula Regional Jail. Now I will tell you, in my 48 years, I've worked very hard to put people in jail that deserve to be there. I don't know that I've ever worked so hard to get someone out. Fortunately, we didn't have to physically remove them from the jail. We found some family members, and they were able to convince them to sign the document, and we got them out. But as a result of that, as a sheriff, it made me think, how many other times have we missed a situation like this where someone was probably arrested that didn't need to be arrested? They were involved in some type of mental health issue. So we partnered with the Autism Society of Tidewater. And I met this amazing woman by the name of Nicole Miller. I don't know if anybody in here knows her or this organization, but she's provided all kinds of training to us at this point. The deputies absolutely love it. And what we've done is we've developed decals or magnetic stickers that go on the back of your vehicle that show the symbol for autism. And what that does is, if you elect to do that, when the deputy walks up to your car on a traffic stop, it will make them aware that they may be dealing with somebody with autism. And we also have started a heads-up program in the county where you can call in and voluntarily give that information, so that if we get dispatched to a residence where someone has autism, then we'll know that going in and be better prepared. So those are some of the things there, that being aware of the needs of the community, that I think we've done very well with as well. Finally, the third part, maintain focus on the importance of being visible in the community. I think that's incredibly important, particularly in my position, to get out in the community and be able to talk to people, events just like this, and being able to hear what the concerns are and provide training. So we do a whole lot of that. But one of the things that I'm really proud of to be involved with is the last 2 years we've partnered with various organizations in the community, the York Fire and Life Safety, Social Services, the school division. 2 years in a row we've gone to an apartment complex in the Yorktown area, and we've been able to provide school supplies, backpacks, personal hygiene items to well over 200 kids both times for them to be able to go back to school. We have Shop with the Sheriff, that every year we take now 200 kids to Walmart, and we provide them with $200 to be able to buy Christmas presents for themselves. And one of the things that's been going on for well over 20 years, the thing that's great about Shop with the Sheriff is, the first few times that I did it, if you don't have the Christmas spirit, by the time you get finished with these young people, you know what Christmas really means, because I can't tell you how many times that I've taken a 5 or 6 year old child and they're told that this is for them, and I realize they're buying socks or clothes or a jacket for their sister or their cousins or somebody else. You almost have to force them to buy something for themselves, and it really touches you. And I've been in Walmart where somebody will see us doing that, and they'll walk up and give me $200 or $300 and walk away and say, this is for the kids. So that type of interaction is really important. We also provide training now for gun safety because of the issue over in Newport News that I talked about at Rich Neck Elementary School. A lot of that was because of how that firearm was not safely stored. So we talk about not only how to store your gun safely, but where to store your gun safely. I did a survey right after I became the sheriff in January, And it bothered me to find out that 93% of the stolen guns in York County come out of unlocked cars. If you extrapolate that across Hampton roads, that's a large portion of the reason that we see stories on a regular basis of young people involved with firearms and wonder, how could they come into possession of these firearms? Well, all they're doing is walking around at nighttime in neighborhoods, pulling on car doors that are unlocked and able to get handguns all the way up to automatic rifles. So we do a lot of talk and a lot of training now with the community about not only how to store the gun safely, but where to store the gun safely as well. And another class that we are offering, that's probably the most popular class we have right now, is called CRAZE, Citizen Response to Active Shooter Events. And it's based on the fact of the Uvalde situation that I mentioned earlier, the failure of law enforcement down there to react properly. Now, CRAZE is for the citizens, not for law enforcement. And what it does is it makes you aware and teaches you to be aware of your surroundings so that if, God forbid, you were ever caught in that scenario, it gives you tips and important safety information to how to survive those events. And that's a class that we really are emphasizing and gets a lot of requests from the community. So those are the three things that I think are the most important things that we do in law enforcement, particularly here in York County, and I'm sure that the other law enforcement officials here will tell you they're doing various types of those exact same situations all over the peninsula. But if you don't take anything else away from my discussion today, take this. Become involved with your local law enforcement agency wherever you are. I know that there are ample opportunities to do that. We just had an event here in York County, and it was all over the peninsula, called National Coffee with a Cop Day. And it gives us an opportunity to go out into the community, sit down with people on a regular basis, and be able to listen to their concerns and discuss ways that we can work together. And finally, I want you to remember this. In York County, when we hire people, one of the things that I tell them is, small things matter. And you're going to hear that, and they're going to see it all over the building. And what I'm talking about is just the things that I'm talking about with you today. Sometimes it's simply just sitting down and talking to somebody, taking the time to get out of the car and talk to people in their neighborhood, find out what their concerns are. Lots of times people aren't concerned about burglaries and robberies or larcenies from vehicles. They're concerned about the kids hanging out on the corner, or the lights are out that are supposed to be for the street lights, or there's a property there that's not being well maintained. That's what makes them unsafe. And I tell them that every once in a while I'm going to meet them in the hallway and I'm going to ask them, what did you do today to make York County a better place? And it may not be a traffic ticket or an arrest. It may be simply listening or getting out of the car, throwing a football, or engaging the public in some way. So thank you for your time today. I know you're going to have a great conference. And if you get the opportunity, please stop by the sheriff's office or invite me. I'd love to come to your community and talk more with you. You have a great day.